host, Julia Napini. I am a clinical and forensic social worker who owns a counseling practice and a consulting business. In this show, we discuss the challenges of being successful in business while maintaining your integrity and staying true to yourself. Join me while I interview other professionals and share insights from life and experience. Let's talk about RingRx, our latest sponsor. RingRx is a high-quality, HIPAA-compliant telephone, text, and fax communications platform. They provide seamless, cost-effective communications for behavioral therapists, medical practices, hospitals, and other healthcare providers. RingRx is designed for modern healthcare environments. They offer customizable features like a phone app, automated patient outreach, voicemail, after-hours call routing, and top-quality desk phones. Try RingRx for free today at ringrx.com. And if you sign up using the code CLIMB, you'll get 15% off your monthly bill forever. Conditions apply. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Compassionate Climb podcast. I am here today with someone that I recently connected to, thought she was the epitome of a badass, and I couldn't wait to bring her on the show and introduce her to all of you. So we travel in a lot of the same circles. She does a lot of traveling. And as you all know, I don't typically read a bio, but I'm going to do that for her. So Taz is a lifelong servant, leader, and learner. She's a licensed mental health counselor, EFT master practitioner, hypnotherapist, certified life coach, fitness instructor, speaker, and veteran. So we're going to talk today about imposter syndrome and self-sabotage and all the ways that she has found to diversify her income and develop other streams utilizing her gifts and interests. Jennifer, Taz, Vazquez, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Julia, for connecting, having me on the show today, for being able to connect with you and with your listeners. And I'm just really excited to be here.
Oh, so am I. I really enjoy these podcast episodes, and we connected through Arilda Surridge, who owns Wellness Counseling, and that was really the turning point in her and I relationship for what it evolved into. I went on one of her retreats. I had an incredible experience. I obviously connected to her, but it was a large retreat. It was Bali. There were 50 of us. And so when I had her on the podcast, that's really where we peeled back the layers, learned more. And she's a self-proclaimed introvert. So it was such a more intimate way to really ask the questions that I wanted to know and learn more about what she was doing. And so that relationship has just transformed my life and connected me to wonderful people like you. So I'm excited to learn more and share. So give us some background on your career climb. Anything that you want to expand on that we shared in your introduction that will help us set the stage for the work that you're doing now.
Thank you. I think the biggest thing is just having a varied career, because I started out in the military. And so I actually did 25 years in the Air Force and retired as a colonel about just over 8 years ago. And from there, kind of took a detour while I'd started on the counseling therapy path, but then got deployed and kept getting more duties and responsibilities within the military. And so I ended up stepping away from therapy for about 20 some years. And then, and took a detour after I retired to an area on the fitness side of the house as a fitness instructor, and then also working at a local gym or community organization, and realized that was not my jam, was not my forte. The fitness side, yes, but what I was doing as a membership director, no. And so I pivoted then and kind of came back to the health and well-being space. I wasn't ready to come back to the therapy world because, after so many years, and I felt I was basically going to have to start over again. And so I was like, all right, then what? And COVID had happened, and, here I was kind of unemployed, had some major life changes going on for me, and kind of came back to, I'm like, all right, well, what do I want to do? And that's kind of where I came into life coaching. Started that, and then got introduced to emotional freedom techniques, or tapping, which is tapping along our acupuncture points, which helps send that calming signal to the brain, and you're able to really process a lot, either whether it be for relaxation all the way to deeper work dealing with trauma, and a lot of things in between. And so I said, all right, that's what I'm going to do. And so I started doing that and meeting people along the way. And I got introduced to someone else that we have, that you just recently met, through, her name's Rebecca, amazing CEO and owner, just as many of, just like you and others, are just fascinating women. And I love being connected and hearing people's stories and what they do. And we geeked out as she moved here during COVID, and we geeked out over tapping and what was known as EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is what her company does as a consultant and teaching others. And quickly realized, I was like, darn it, I really love this modality and this therapy. And I was like, well, I guess that means I'm going to go back to the therapy world, because EMDR is required. You're required to be a therapist in order to be able to practice that therapy with clients. And it just fit in really well with what I was already doing with tapping and coaching. And so I said, all right. And about the same time, I got invited to an office. Instead of being up until this point, I had just been doing virtual, seeing clients. Got invited to do to be part in a local office and share office space. And so said yes to that. And literally, it's always amazing, serendipity, or when you are open to receiving and how things just fall into place. Got in touch with, applied in Washington State to be a associate licensed mental health therapist or counselor here. And then quickly from there, got connected with an agency that is primarily, the name says it all, Northwest EMDR Therapy. So, their primary focus is EMDR. And so I've been with them now for several years, and I love it. And I have, so I have my own business, and I also have working for an agency, which I love because I don't have to deal with insurance, and I let them deal with insurance. And I get to just deal with clients and support clients on their journey. And it really, lights me up. And I still have, whether you want to call it ADHD, multi-passionate interests. And so I'm also still a fitness instructor. I'm a coach for Rocksteady Boxing, which is for people with Parkinson's disease. So helping them delay and slow the progression of that disease. So that's kind of long, varied, wide range, and different hats and buckets that I have now with that.
I love it. You're a busy woman. So before we get into the coaching and the counseling, I would love to hear how your experience as a veteran and in the Air Force informs your work. Do you find that tends to be a specialty area for you, or were there any takeaways that you're incorporating in your work now?
Which is kind of so good question. One aspect, it informs what I do in the sense that given the career field that I was in, intelligence is the name, but really is analyzing, right? And so someone goes, how do you go from being an analyst in the military to a therapist? I'm like, well, you're still analyzing. You're just doing it in a different way.
Right.
And so having the lifelong skill and resource, that's something that, kind of translates well.
Yes.
Interestingly enough, I've found that most of my clients are not military, or there's been a handful that have been prior military, but just because of where I live and or not supporting the TRICARE, which is the main insurance that supports the military. So I find that I don't have a lot of military clients unless they're paying out of pocket, on their own. In terms of what I do, and I think things that still make me more aware of, is more along the lines of when I work with women and I see the power differential, and not only as a retired colonel, numerous people say, you don't act like it. I'm like, good. But then also as a female and having experienced toxic work environments, and a lot of the issues sometimes that we're seeing right now socially or politically that are impacting a lot of clients, the system challenges and issues in terms of um, uh, if you want to say racism, if you want to say uh, misogyny, I mean, just a lot of issues that we
Yeah.
see in our one-on-one clients, and it's not just about being able to um, regulate our nervous system and be okay with things, or if we process things, within our own dynamic and family and generational, there's still the institutional and the system challenges that are also there, and that
Hmm.
systemic issue. And so I think I take away, because of my experiences from the military, being more aware to be able to have open conversations, with
Yeah.
clients and how their view and their culture and their experiences, impact what they're seeing.
Yes, that's so helpful. I'm glad we started there. So, as you have evolved and the work that you're doing now, tell
Yeah.
me anything that you can that would be helpful to the listeners because you really are balancing between these two worlds of working for someone else, taking insurance, having your own business, setting your rates, the marketing that comes with that, and maybe some of the shifts that you had to make in terms of mindset and how you structure that, because it really is two very different models. So, what
It
can you share about that
is.
that would be helpful?
I think the biggest thing for somebody, honestly, is what's the quality of life that you want? What are
Mm-hmm.
your interests? What are your passion? What lights you up? And then what's your quality of life? Because when you are able to get clear on those, you backtrack and it makes it a lot easier to figure out what's my income stream? What do I want? Are there other avenues or other income streams that I can do that are related or completely different from what you're doing day to day,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to balance that and then share that with others. I was able to share that same message recently, kind of doing a mentoring session
Mm-hmm.
with someone who was had just gotten their associate's license, so they're pre-licensed here in Washington, and they were starting to look at, gosh, does being a therapist, it doesn't pay really well here. Does that mean I'm just going to have to keep my job doing X forever? And it's like, well, not necessarily. I said, but it also depends on how you're looking at it. Do you like X job? Well, yeah, I do. Great. Then it's not a matter of having to do one or the other. It's
Mm-hmm.
where's your energy level? What's your passion? Where's your interest? And what do you want in your life? Well, for me, I love having the different mix of things and being able to do. I would also say that I'm also very conscious of being ethical, and obviously following the law and requirements that we need to.
Yeah.
Um, because of that, I want to make sure that there isn't a conflict of interest between what I do with my business and then where's that line, and then on the therapy side of the house, working for an agency. And
Mm-hmm.
so right now, I chose to make a separate where it's coaching, tapping, hypnotherapy, because I'm able to do that and I'm able to see other clients outside of the state, which gives me additional flexibility and experiences. And then focusing on the therapy side with the agency, and makes it a lot cleaner and easier as I get referrals and being able to share with a client as we have a consult of, well, here's how I support clients and what might work best for them
Mm-hmm.
for
That's
support.
really helpful. So, when you say life coaching, so that has
Mhm.
obviously become something that is a little bit more prominent. I'm sure everybody has their own style and process. I would love to hear what that looks like when somebody comes to you. Who are your ideal clients for that specifically? How do you structure the process? What does it look like to work with you in that capacity?
Um, Honestly, when it comes to clients, majority of them have also been working on not so much the life coaching piece, but more the tapping piece.
Okay.
Because, and I say that specifically because of, if you look at the spectrum of what we're authorized to do given different roles and responsibilities. So, because traditionally coaching, right, is going to be more forward looking. Hey, what's the issue or the issue the client's coming with, and where do they want to go? And then helping them overcome from a motivational interviewing, positive psychology, perspective, typically. Now, within the coaching world is also tapping. As a master practitioner, I'm able to run a little bit more of the gamut from the traditional coaching, life coaching, all the way to also working with trauma. And I'm authorized to do that as a practitioner. I also can use that then as a therapist, going into the past, going and dealing with trauma from the past. And so that gives me a nice flexibility, but I also have to be very specific with clients on what I can and can't do. And in terms of, just to help them better understand, because they may not be familiar with, well, what's a coach? What's a practitioner? What's a therapist? What's the difference? I just want help, and so that's something that I think is important, distinguishing focus, because in terms of clients that I work with, the vast majority of my clients have all come to me predominantly for tapping support, and typically it's depression, anxiety, trauma that they're trying to do. And then I also help clients in terms of other clients are going to be those key life changes or transitions. They've mostly been work related as transitioning, because, I've had to do that myself, transitioning from the military after 25 years and then saying, well, now what? What do I want to do? What skills do I have? And then also having to navigate, that sense of imposter syndrome, that sense of, well, who am I? Do I know enough? How can I support somebody? What if, and the things that happen when we start getting into that role of self-doubt, or the lack of confidence in terms of what we know or what we really getting into. Hey, what are our knowledge, skills, and abilities? Because there's so much that's translatable. And then once again, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? What are your interests? And I love being able to help someone just peel those back and start to really see, oh, wow, I know a lot. I can do a lot. I have a lot of interests. There's a lot of ways I can go with this. And then get them to feel more excited about the possibilities and opportunities that they're going to be able to do in the future.
Yeah, great segue. So can you share more about your own personal experience with imposter syndrome, self-sabotage, how you overcame that? And then you kind of started to illuminate maybe some of the questions that you might ask someone when you're working together and what might help to identify where they can go and what the possibilities are. But anything else that you can share about how you kind of open that discussion and get them to think a little bit more outside the box about those things?
Yeah. So in terms of my own journey, so for me, just big picture without going into details is more of dealing with a lifetime of low self-esteem, anxiety, depression. See a theme of who I'm helping in terms of clients, post-traumatic stress as well. And I had to go on my own healing journey, to be able to reintegrate post-traumatic stress and experiences, moral trauma that I had dealt with, from the military time, and then, or I should say, moral wounding from the military time, and then also the low self-esteem. And I can remember when I was always kind of a high achiever, and I always masked my low self-esteem, kind of buckling down, doing a lot, doing more, trying to do it to the best. That perfectionist mindset, unfortunately, that's kind of how my low self-esteem masked. And I realized when I had started building my coaching business, and I was working with a mentor who's a fabulous mentor and coach. His name's Jason Goldberg. And so I was working with him and also others in a group mastermind, for building our coaching business. Okay. And I remember thinking there were exercises there that we had to do of, hey, what do you know? What are you known for? And the first thought that came to me, I'm not known for anything, who am I? And right there was the start of that shift, of really noticing it, honoring it, being able to recognize what was happening and hold space for it, and then question and challenge it. And through different exercises over time, kind of that idea of time and practice, and really starting to break it down, hey, what were my interests? What things did I like? And just list a page of what my interests were. What things have I done? What interests do I have? When you start to break things down like that, it starts to open up possibility rather than this what do you want to do? And kind of this deer in the headlight, I don't know, and it really starts to break down and reframe the idea of imposter syndrome, because at its root, it's that confidence of ourself. I am enough. I know enough. I'm smart enough, and being able to challenge those limiting beliefs or negative beliefs so we can start to shift them. And then from there, when you start seeing all the things that you like and can do and have done or want to do, you get to start. And then even, hey, what'd you want to do when you grew up? I can remember growing up, at one point, I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a basketball player. I wanted to be a veterinarian, so just those things. And how come? What were those knowledge, skills, and abilities? And then what did I do in the military? And all of those start to really help. And that's what I do with clients, when they're looking at trying to make those life transitions, especially if it's work related, or what do they want to do if empty nesters, what do they want to do in their life? How do they want to live their life? What's their purpose? What are their interests? And kind of help them, guide them in that way. And even with therapy clients, even if we're dealing with complex trauma, PTSD, or some, really heady, hard, challenging presenting issues, it's the same thing. Hey, what are your goals? What are your interests? What do you want? Because that really helps be a little beacon, a guiding light, a support of, of building hope, and realizing there can be other outcome, that we can go from, surviving, that we can go from post-traumatic stress to post-traumatic growth, and being able to really live our life. With my company, it's passion, purpose, play, and that's the whole reason for it. Is really feeling passionate about, that there is another way, and that you can have fun. That was something I had to learn along the way, because, military, straight-laced, very serious. What do you mean? It's a business. You can't have fun. No, laugh, have fun, play, tinker. The number of times, regardless of who the client is, that they'll hear me say, get curious. They'll hear me say, play, tinker, get messy. And having to challenge some of those notions, or having to learn how to do it. And then in terms of passion, purpose, what's my purpose? That servant leader, supporting. And then the community, that's also something that's so important, because I didn't have a big community. I mean, I did with the military and the people I'd meet, but I changed jobs like every 2 years in the 25-year time. My dad was Air Force, a military family. And so I moved 23 times in my life, which really made it difficult. And then, I'll say a self-proclaimed introvert with extroverted tendencies, that low self-esteem, it made it hard to connect with people as I was growing up. So I was always feeling kind of lonely or alone or isolated. And a lot of that was, the messaging and the limiting beliefs and the experiences that I had growing up. But by being able to recognize those experiences helps normalize it then for others, to realize that we can do something different, that we can play, that we can have fun, and that we can connect. And I think because of COVID, when I first moved to the Pacific Northwest after I retired, I had joined a women's networking group, and I'd never, ever done anything like that before. And it was because of, being a coach and setting up a business, and then wanting to meet other people and get to know them and support them with their businesses. And that women's group really taught me a lot about how important community is, and that how interesting and fascinating it is to get to know other people, and then there's that genuine alignment, of being able to want to support other people, and they're feeling the same about you. So that's kind of where, life took me, and then how I'm applying, some of those tools and resources with what I do now.
I really appreciate you sharing that, because it provides so much context to kind of the feeling and the experience that's behind when someone's sitting with you and you're helping them through it, that you really get it on a different level. And so even if that's not something that you necessarily share, I find that clients definitely recognize that. So I'm curious how you would approach potential resistance to some of that. So let's say you're asking questions to someone who really hasn't explored a lot of this in a while. They're
Yeah.
at a phase in life where maybe they've been very focused on other people, their children, their partner, caretaking for family, and maybe they've lost touch with a lot of those interests or the things that they enjoy. And you ask them those questions and they're not really sure where to go with it. And I'm also curious if your approach would be different with you as the therapist as opposed to you as the coach with that same scenario.
Good questions. Let's see. I think so. How would I approach it? When I look at resistance, I look at it as an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I love EMDR's adaptive information processing model. The idea
Okay.
that all behavior, all thought, all issues are the result of adaptive behavior that worked for us at a time and then became maybe maladaptive or not helpful. And I love that, looking at that model. So it's not it's not like a disease or disorder medical model. It's more, in some ways, positive psychology and motivational interviewing perspective. That there's a reason why something happened, or there's a reason why there's that resistance. And I look at that resistance as an opportunity to have a conversation, because it's there for a purpose, and actually taking time to say, hey, are you open to noticing this? I'm seeing this. How about you? What are you noticing in that? And exploring with them and inviting them in. Because a lot of times, and I love, for me, on the therapy side, I love tapping, but I love EMDR. I love parts work. I love art therapy. And so and polyvagal theory. And so that tends to be my jam that I'm using most of the time, along with cognitive behavioral. And so it's about having a conversation with that part in whatever way it is, the client needs. And that tends to really quickly reduce the resistance or the disassociation or whatever's going on. And if it doesn't, or they're not ready yet, then sometimes it's about asking, hey, what's the benefit? And people will look at you like, what the heck do you mean? How is this X a benefit? It's like, well, if it's an adaptive pattern in order to keep you safe, that's the benefit. It's still trying to keep you safe, right? Oh, okay. And so then being able to have that conversation and breaking it down in a different way and seeing, hey, what's the gain, or what's the reason, or what's the rationale? It feels a lot safer. And it's also
Mm-hmm.
about making sure of being where the client's at and not trying to just say, okay, just because this is my jam doesn't mean I'm going to say, let's jump right in and let's just get to the issue and start processing it. Because not everybody's going to be able to do that. I mean, you gotta build the relationship, because regardless if it's therapy to coaching, tapping, or tapping, etc., it's all about the relationship. Because if you don't have that trust, the client doesn't have that trust and rapport with you. That's the number one indicator, or outcome of studies over and over and over again, that research that shows that that's the number one factor, for a client's shift or change, or how they approach therapy. And so I think that's something that's important. Another thing I like to do when it comes to if there's resistance, or if kind of like I was like, well, I don't know, like, hey, let's break it down, and you just start with more specific questions. You start with, what's a day in the life look like? You start with, hey, if you just, woke up one morning and you knew things were different, what would it be? And kind of just giving that chance to start exploring or imagining or playing, and asking them questions along that way sometimes starts to open up the possibilities and ideas for a client.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So I'm also thinking on the business side, a lot of those listening might be at different stages of either considering starting a business, or they want to expand and maybe even diversifying. So what would you say about your own experience with identifying these alternative income streams that would be helpful to someone who might be earlier in their journey? It sounds like you'd probably use a similar process of getting curious and thinking about how they want to spend their time and how they can leverage the skills that they already have. But anything beyond that would be helpful.
Well, and what is the quality of life, because it's not always about how much money do they need to make. It's about what's the quality of life. Because if you get to explore a lot more of the different aspects of your life. The great coaching exercise called the Wheel of Life. It's like little wedges of the different aspects of your life, from personal development to friends to relationships to um,
like work and
interest, work.
spirituality. And I just
Yeah,
came
yeah,
back from a retreat where we talked about that. So it's fresh on my brain.
yeah. And so, but that's a great way of introducing someone to quality of life, because a lot of times we're
Mm,
not thinking about it. We're in the day to day, or we're, caught up in feeling frozen or stuck of I don't know what I want to do, or I'm unhappy in work, and that perspective, or I just work is work, and we have the opportunity, not all the time, but a lot of times we have that opportunity to go, well, what do I really want in my life? What is that quality of life?
mm-hmm.
And start looking at breaking it down of where would you rate it right now, each wedge? And then
Yeah.
where, what's your ideal? If it was a 10, what would that be? And if it's a 1 right now, it's okay. What would a 2 look like? And so you're really starting to get little baby steps of breaking something down so someone can start seeing possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times when that anxiety and that big picture of I just gotta get a job, or I just want X money. Well, how come? What's really going on? Have you thought about X? What else do you want in your life? And when you can start bringing those different aspects in, it makes the process less daunting, I
Yeah.
find, and you get to be more curious and play with different ideas of what do you want to do in your life. And,
Yeah.
as I was building a coaching business, I worked at a restaurant that I love here in town. I worked there for 9 months, and people would go, "You're a retired colonel. You're working as staff in a restaurant?" I'm like, damn straight. I love this restaurant and it's fascinating. I love the environment. I love understanding the restaurant business. And it just lit me up. And it was an income stream for a period of time,
Yeah.
based on what I was doing at the time. And so when it comes to those different income streams, don't limit yourself. They can be similar, they can be very different. It's what's the quality of life and the time and energy, that you have for things. Because
Yeah.
there's going to be times along the way where you've got to make shifts and be open to making those shifts. Where maybe something has to drop off or something didn't work. And you're like, all right, now what? What else could I do?
Yeah, I love that. Two of the things that I take away from that I could see being really helpful for someone that might be stuck would be having them consider what they wanted to be when they were younger. That could bring about such an interesting conversation. And then I love using that wheel to really hone in on what are the areas that they feel really good about. There might be
Yeah,
some that they've overlooked or neglected. And that in and of itself can give so many different opportunities, as you said, and different directions for them to start considering what could life look like if
yeah,
maybe there was that shift in that focus and increasing maybe that percentage or those numbers. So I
yeah.
love it.
And
So,
I'm kind of curious too. I mean, if it's okay to ask, I
of
mean, because
course.
you're doing this all the time, working with therapists and coaches and others.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you find to be kind of that big takeaway or that big thing to focus on, for clients and helping them as they're starting to expand or change their business or income stream?
Yeah. So at this point, with the amount of time that I've been doing it and how many people I've worked with, there's a huge variety. I would say the thing that comes up the most often. So in the consulting business, there's three of us now. So initially, I didn't pick a niche. I loved working with everyone. Those that
Yeah,
were starting a practice, expanding the group, diversifying. I'll work with them all. And then as time went on, I realized what I loved the most was helping people build a team, develop those leadership skills, that structure, that foundation, and then starting to consider diversifying what that could look like and how to leverage our skills as mental health professionals.
yeah,
So, one of the things that comes up the most frequently is money
yeah,
and a lot of the mindsets around that. How do they set their pricing? Are they going to take insurance or not? How do they pay their staff? And how do they structure that? And everybody wants to be a good boss, pay people well, be competitive, and not always realizing all that goes into that and that balance between
yeah,
what is best for the clinician, what is best for the client, but what's best for the practice. And
Yeah.
so not always considering sometimes those long-term repercussions of setting a rate of compensation that isn't sustainable in the long term. So we're always talking about money. And then I would say the second thing is marketing. And for therapists, it's really about finding ways to do that are in alignment and that do feel like it's authentic and not in the ways that we typically think of sales.
Yeah. I think I love that, and I totally agree with what you're just explained. And on the marketing piece, I'm grateful that I did the coaching first, because that's one of the things we also had to learn. How do you market? How do you do it authentically? It's not just about clicking and liking. It's about, what are you interested in? What are you passionate about? And how can you share it? And share it in ways that someone is going to help them. I'll give an example. So and as therapists, we don't share our story, but as a coach, I do share my story. And it's something where, when I had to first write out my story, and then got to the point of publishing it, I say I had vulnerability hangover the next day. I'm like, what did I do? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I did this. Literally within 24 hours, there was a fellow coach from Rocksteady Boxing, because we were in the same forum, that I'd never met before. They reached out via Messenger and shared with me another coach who was friends with them, and had said, did you see this? I resonate so much with this person's story. And then they said, don't stop what you're doing. It makes a difference. And right there, I'm just like, okay, no more vulnerability hangover. Let's go.
Right? Yeah, that you were striking a nerve and headed in the right direction, and how incredible for you to experience that version of yourself after some of what you had described before, when maybe there was more questioning and uncertainty.
And it's always
been such an enjoyable conversation, and I love how you've kind of taken us through kind of what got you to where you are, how you evolved, how you added in some other elements, and really found something that spoke to your strengths, but also preserved and promoted your quality of life as you describe it. Is there anything else that you want to share about what we've talked about so far?
No, I think, the biggest thing too is keep being curious and keep being open to opportunities. Now in my business, it's kind of because of the circles of who we've met. Now, because I've always been a teacher, instructor in different ways, different facets,
and leader.
And now, I get the opportunity to do that, at therapist retreats. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity. And I love it. It's just another way of being able to serve and share and connect, and also fill my cup up based on the passions and the interests that I have. So don't be afraid to be curious and to keep growing and keep reaching and being like, what do I want to do?
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I wish that I could bottle up how I am feeling in this moment, coming back from 2 weeks of back-to-back retreats, the people that I met, the experiences that I had, the conversations, and being cared for in that way by the places that we were at, in terms of just the food and the peace and the scenery and the nature. And so I'm so excited for you and your Paris journey and what else ends up coming from that. So I will definitely throw the links in the show notes, but let everybody know the best way to follow along, learn more about you, if they have interest in working with you.
Sure. So my website is tazvazquez.com. So that's going to be on the life coaching and hypnotherapy tapping side of the house. Northwest EMDR Therapy is who I work for, if someone is looking for support in that way in Washington State. But then also on social media is Jennifer Vazquez on Facebook, or you can see Dancing Dogs 2 on Instagram, and then it's Jennifer Vazquez, for LinkedIn as well.
Love it. Thank you so much for your time. Glad we connected, and looking forward to continuing to see where you end up and what else you add to the mix.
Thank you so much, Julia, for this opportunity. I love the fact that we've gotten to connect and start to get to know each other, and I can't wait to keep that going and learn from you and support you along the way too. So thank you.
Likewise. If you like what you're hearing, please rate and review. This will help others find us and benefit as well. The Compassionate Climb podcast represents the opinions of Julia Napini and her guests. The information provided is intended for educational purposes only and should not be taken as legal advice. If that is what you are seeking, please consult an attorney.